Punishment from the throne. The courtroom of the alien palace was silent. Hundreds of alien nobles sat in tall golden chairs, watching the girl in chains walk slowly toward the throne. Her name was Lyra. She was young, proud, and different from the others of her kind. Her silver blue skin was bruised. Her white hair was tied back roughly. Still, she held her head high. Guards pushed her forward, and she fell to her knees. The Empress of Vornak stood above her. She was tall, with cold, red eyes and a voice that echoed through the hall. "You refused to follow my command in the war," the Empress said. "You let the human children live. You showed weakness." Lyra did not speak. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes stared straight ahead. "You betrayed your people," the Empress hissed. "And betrayal has a price." The nobles shouted in anger. Some demanded death. Others wanted her thrown into space. But the Empress raised her hand to silence them. "No," she said slowly. "Death is too easy." She turned her sharp gaze toward the center of the room. "Bring in the human." A bright blue portal opened with a loud hum. A man stepped through. He looked confused. He was human. Tall, broad-shouldered, in dusty clothes, and heavy boots. His name was Evan Wolf, a middle-aged settler from a distant mining colony. He had been told to report to the Vornak Empire to receive a reward for helping repair a trade station. Now he stood inside a royal alien courtroom, surrounded by strange beings facing a chained alien girl. What is this?" Evan asked carefully. The Empress smiled in a cruel way. "You are a simple man and you have served us. You will be rewarded." She pointed at Lyra. "This girl is your reward. A slave. A punishment." Evan's jaw tightened. "I didn't agree to this." The Empress ignored him. "She will serve you. You may do with her as you wish. She is no longer one of us." Lyra's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. She had heard stories about humans. Some said they were kind, others called them violent. She didn't care anymore. Her people had cast her out. The guards threw a leash into Evan's hands, a symbol of ownership. He looked at it, then looked at her. She expected him to pull it, to shout, to claim her like a thing. Instead, Evan dropped the leash on the floor. "I don't take slaves," he said. The room gasped, but the Empress only laughed. "You don't have a choice, human. Take her or leave with nothing." Evan looked at Lyra again. She was dirty, tired, and silent, but not broken. He sighed. "Fine, I'll take her, but not as a slave." The portal reopened. The Empress waved her hand. "Go." "Your punishment has begun," she said, not to Evan, but to Lyra. The stars passed quickly as the shuttle took them back to the outer colonies. Evan sat in silence. Lyra sat on the floor of the ship, still chained. She didn't move. She didn't speak. Evan glanced at her. "I didn't ask for this," he said quietly. She said nothing. "I don't know why they gave you to me, but I'm not going to hurt you." Still, she didn't respond. After hours of silence, he stood and unchained her hands. She looked up at him slowly. "You can sit in the chair if you want," he said, and returned to the cockpit. Lyra didn't move for a while. Then carefully she sat in the seat. Her hands rubbed her sore wrists. Her mind was racing. Why wasn't he shouting? Why didn't he hit her or mock her? What game was this? She stayed alert. She didn't trust him. Not yet. When the shuttle landed, on Evan's dusty planet, the heat of the twin suns hit her like a wave. His home was far from others, a small shack near a rocky canyon. Old tools and machines were scattered outside. It looked poor, but it was clean. Evan opened the door and stepped aside. "Go ahead," he said. Lyra walked in slowly. It was cooler inside. There was one bed, one table, and a small shelf of old books. "You can take the bed," he said. "I'll sleep on the floor." Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because you're not my prisoner." Lyra was silent. That night, Evan cooked soup and left a bowl for her. She waited until he turned away. then finally tasted it. It was simple, but warm. For the first time in weeks, she felt her body relax, but her mind stayed alert. This human was strange, kind, too kind, and that scared her more than anything else. The sun rose red over the rocky land. Dry winds blew across the desert, carrying dust and silence. Lyra stood outside the shack, staring at the endless emptiness around her. Her silver-blue skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight. She wasn't used to this kind of heat. She wasn't used to freedom either. Behind her, the wooden door creaked. Evan stepped out, wiping oil from his hands with a cloth. "You didn't sleep much," he said softly. "I don't need sleep to survive," Lyra replied without turning around. He nodded and walked past her, toward a half-broken machine lying in the dirt. "Suit yourself." She turned to look at him. He wasn't like the men she had read about in records, conquerors, war makers, brutal. He was just quiet and busy. Every hour he was fixing, lifting, welding, or feeding the generator. He didn't order her around. He didn't lock her inside. He just let her. That made her suspicious. No one gave kindness for free. Later that morning, Evan came into the shack with a tray, 2 cups of water, and dry bread. He placed it on the table and sat on the floor. "You can eat if you want," he said. Lyra stared at the tray. "Aren't you going to force me?" "No." "Why not?" she asked. "Because I'm not a monster," he said. "And you're not a slave. Not to me." Lyra didn't touch the food. Not then. But when he stepped outside again, she took one bite. Then another. Her stomach ached with hunger, but her pride had always been stronger. That pride, however, was starting to bend. 3 days passed. She still said little, but she noticed everything. Evan's boots had holes. He patched them himself. He read old books by lamplight. He talked to himself sometimes, or to a photograph of a little girl on the wall, his daughter. One evening she heard him whisper, "You would have liked her. She's got fire." Lyra sat on the bed, silent in the shadows. She pretended to sleep, but she heard his voice. She didn't ask to be given away like this. "What am I supposed to do, Anna? I'm not a hero." The light went off. His body lay down on the floor. Lyra stared at the dark ceiling, her heart tight. Who was this man? On the 4th day, Evan got a deep cut on his hand while lifting a metal rod. Blood dripped on the ground. He didn't scream, just gritted his teeth and wrapped it in a dirty cloth. "Sit down," Lyra said suddenly. He looked at her in surprise. "I said sit." He obeyed. She cleaned the wound carefully. Her alien fingers were steady. Her people were trained in healing. Long ago, before war turned them into tools. "Why help me now?" Evan asked. "Because I owe you nothing," she said. "But I don't. Return kindness with silence forever." He smiled faintly. "That's good enough for me." That night she sat at the table while he cooked. They didn't speak much, but it wasn't cold anymore. The silence was softer now, safer. When the rain came, it hit the metal roof hard. Evan looked up. "Rare out here." Lyra watched the water run down the windows. Her voice was low. "In my city, rain was forbidden. Our sky was covered with black shields. No one saw clouds." Evan blinked. "Why would they block the sky?" "Because freedom is dangerous," she said simply. On the 7th day, she found an old device hidden under a drawer, a communicator. It was still working. With one signal, she could call a Vornak ship to take her back, or report Evan. She stared at it for a long time. Then she put it back. That night she said, "Why didn't you use me?" Evan was sitting by the fire. "Use you?" Like they expected. Like the Empress wanted. He stirred the fire slowly. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything. To have no one." She stared at him. "I lost my daughter 2 years ago," he said, A fever. Couldn't afford the medicine in time. After that, I stopped caring much about rewards. Lyra sat beside him. The firelight flickered between them. I don't trust easily, she whispered. Neither do I, he replied. The next morning, Lyra walked outside with a bucket of water. Evan watched from the doorway as she watered the small plant near the wall. It was weak but alive. Why that plant? He asked. She shrugged. Because it's stubborn. He laughed. It was the first real laugh she had heard from him. Something in her chest warmed. Maybe, just maybe, this human wasn't pretending, and maybe she didn't have to keep pretending either. But far away across the desert sky, a black dot moved in space. Someone was watching. Days turned into weeks. Lyra no longer sat in silence. She began helping Evan with small tasks, fixing old pipes, lifting crates, and organizing tools. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her voice was clear, strong. Evan never asked her to do anything, but she still did it. Not because she was forced, because something inside her had changed. She wasn't a slave here, but the chains in her mind were harder to break than the metal ones on her wrists. One morning, Lyra stood in front of a mirror. Her skin was healing. The bruises had faded. Her long white hair was now brushed and clean. She didn't recognize the girl staring back. She touched the simple clothes Evan had given her. They weren't beautiful, but they were hers. She stepped outside and saw Evan trying to repair the power lines. He was sweating, holding a cable high over his head. Let me help, she said. You sure? He asked. I'm not fragile. He smiled. Didn't think you were. She climbed up beside him, steady and quick. In less than 10 minutes, the power was back. Evan stared at her. Remind me never to underestimate you. Lyra smirked. You already did. That first day. That evening, they ate together at the small table. Evan brought out a box with old photos and items. He showed her a small toy. My daughter used to carry this around. Wouldn't let go of it even when she slept. Lyra touched it gently. She must have been strong. She was, Evan said. Like you. There was a long pause. Then Lyra whispered, I wasn't always strong. I just learned how to hide my weakness. Evan looked at her with calm eyes. It's not weak to care. Or to feel. She stared down at her bowl. Where I come from, emotions are dangerous. Evan nodded. Then I'm glad you're not there anymore. Later that night, Lyra walked outside. The stars were bright. No walls, no shields, just sky. She climbed up the hill behind the shack and sat on a rock. Her heart was heavy. What was she now? Not a soldier, not a prisoner, just lost. A sound behind her made her turn. Evan stood a few feet away, holding a blanket. It gets cold, he said, offering it. She took it without a word. They sat side by side. After a while, she asked, Do you believe people can change? He thought for a moment. I believe people can heal. That's not the same, she said. No, he agreed. But sometimes healing leads to change. Lyra didn't reply, but she didn't walk away either. The next day, Evan made a trip to the nearest trade post almost 4 hours away. Lyra stayed behind, working on small repairs. While cleaning the shed, she found a strange box under some old blankets. Inside, it was a datapad and a small locked case. The datapad still worked. She tapped it. A soft beep echoed, and a message appeared. Observer report. Subject Lyra. Human contact has not broken her spirit. Continue monitoring. Her eyes went wide. Someone had been watching her. She opened the locked case using a hairpin and a little skill from her soldier days. Inside, she found a small round tracking device and a seal of the Vornak Royal Guard. Her breath caught. She was being tested, punished, but also watched. If she didn't break, someone would come for her. When Evan returned that evening, he brought food, tools, and a bandage around his arm. What happened? She asked. Trade post got hit by raiders. I stepped in to help. She frowned. Are you always this reckless? He grinned. Only when someone's in danger. She sat him down and began wrapping his wound again. But her mind was elsewhere. Should she tell him? No, not yet. Not until she was sure. That night, Lyra lay awake. What did the Empress want? For her to beg? To fall? Or worse, fall in love, and then be taken away? She touched her chest. Her heart beat too fast. This human had shown her kindness, dignity, trust. But what if it was all a setup? What if he knew? She sat up, looked at him sleeping on the floor. No, his wounds were real. His tiredness was real. His loss, his love, his pain. None of it could be faked. She put her hand over her heart again. The chains were still there, but they were cracking, bit by bit. In the early morning, Evan woke to find Lyra sitting by the window, watching the sunrise. She looked calm, peaceful, but her words hit like thunder. I found the tracker. He froze. I know someone's watching. Maybe even close, but I haven't run. Evan sat beside her. Why not? She turned to him. Because for the first time, I don't want to run. He looked at her surprised. I still don't trust the world, she said. But I'm starting to trust you. Evan smiled softly. Then let's see where that takes us. But far beyond the stars, the message had already been sent. The girl is not broken. The human must now be removed. Lyra was fixing the water pipe outside when she heard the strange sound, a low hum in the sky. It wasn't thunder. It was a ship. She dropped her tools and stood up slowly. Dust blew around her feet as a sleek black vessel descended from the clouds. The markings on the side made her stomach twist. Vornak Royal Class. She ran inside. Evan! He stepped out of the shack, wiping his hands. What's wrong? She pointed. They're here. The ship landed near the edge of the canyon. Its doors opened with a hiss. One figure stepped out, tall, thin, in a dark robe. His eyes were covered by a silver visor, and his steps were smooth and slow. Lyra knew him, Commander Thalos, the Empress's personal shadow. Human, the visitor said calmly. May I come in? Evan didn't answer right away. He glanced at Lyra, then nodded once. Let's talk outside. The three of them stood beneath the sun, the wind pushing, dust across the ground. Thalos spoke gently. I come with news and a generous offer. Lyra narrowed her eyes. You were sent to check on me. Indeed, Thalos said with a slight bow. Her Majesty is curious. She wonders if your punishment has served its purpose. Evan stepped between them. She's not a prisoner anymore. Thalos tilted his head. You speak with such confidence, yet you accepted a gift that was not truly yours. I never asked for her, and yet she is here, living under your roof, wearing your clothes, breathing your air. Evan's voice was firm. Because she's free. Thalos smiled, cold and fake. The Empress believes otherwise. He held out a metal box. Inside was a tiny cube, payment, enough for Evan to live in luxury for years. All you must do is return the girl, Thalos said. No one will question your honor. You helped. Now be rewarded. Evan didn't even look at the cube. No. Thalos blinked. Excuse me? I said no. The wind picked up, sharp and dry. Thalos's voice dropped. You refuse a gift from the Empress? I refuse to sell someone who isn't mine, Evan said. Lyra stood behind him, her hands clenched tightly. Thalos's smile vanished. Very well, he said softly. The Empire always watches. Think about your choice, before it becomes your last. He turned, walked back to the ship, and within seconds, the vessel lifted into the sky and vanished. That night, Evan sat on the porch, staring at the stars. He didn't say anything. Lyra brought him a cup of hot broth and placed it next to him. He looked up at her. They're not done, are they? No, she said quietly. They never expected me to survive. Evan let out a long sigh. I should have known. Taking you in made me a target. You can still walk away, she whispered. You can take the money. I won't hate you. He looked at her sharply. You think I'd leave you behind? She looked down. I think I wouldn't blame you if you did. He stood up and faced her. Lyra, listen to me. I don't care what they want. You've done more for me than anyone else since Anna died. You've brought life back to this place. Lyra's throat tightened. Even if that life puts you in danger? He nodded. Some things are worth the risk. Lyra walked away from him and stood in the field, staring up at the stars. Memories of her old life flashed in her mind. Training, battle, cold metal floors, orders shouted in her ear. She had followed every rule until she couldn't anymore. She had let the children live, and for that they gave her to a human. But the human had not hurt her. He had healed her. She wiped her eyes quickly. She didn't want him to see her cry, but it was too late. Evan stood behind her and placed a blanket over her shoulders. You don't have to be strong all the time, he said. She looked at him with glassy eyes. I don't know how to be anything else. Then let me help, he said. We figure it out together. Later that night, as they locked the doors and dimmed the lights, Lyra stood by the window. Her heart was heavy but steady. Then something caught her eye, a shimmer in the distance. Movement. She leaned closer and saw shadows near the canyon edge, too many for wild animals. Her breath caught. We're being watched. Evan walked over. Raiders? No, she said. Vornak scouts. I recognize their heat cloaks. Evan grabbed his old rifle and checked the charge. We don't have weapons strong enough to fight an elite squad, Lyra said. I've got one weapon they can't match, Evan replied. She frowned. What? He looked at her. You. Outside, the scouts retreated into the darkness. They had seen enough. A voice crackled in their earpieces. The human resists. The girl is loyal. Begin Phase 2. Far away, the Empress stood in her chamber, staring into a glowing mirror. She placed one finger on the surface and whispered, Break the man and she will follow. The sky was too quiet. Lyra noticed it first. The birds were gone. No wind, no dust. Just silence. She stepped out of the shack with a wrench in one hand and her eyes scanning the horizon. The sun was setting, casting a blood-orange light across the rocks. Shadows grew long, too long. Evan came around the corner holding a toolbox. Water system's fixed, he said. Something's wrong, Lyra replied. He looked at her, then looked at the sky. Scouts? She shook her head. No, it feels heavier. That's when they heard the hum. A deep mechanical rumble rolled through the ground. The small shack shook slightly. A cloud of dust exploded on the ridge above, and then they saw them. 6 armored raiders on hoverbikes. They wore black suits with red Vornak symbols. One of them held a pulse cannon. Another had sharp metal claws, attached to both arms. Evan cursed. Not locals. These guys were sent. Lyra stepped in front of him. They don't want you. They want me. The leader raised a speaker. His voice echoed across the valley. Human, surrender the girl and we'll let you live. Resist and your bones will rot beneath your field. Evan didn't move. Lyra, go inside. Lock the back hatch. I'm not hiding, she said. You're not fighting 6 trained killers alone. She turned to him slowly, her voice calm. Neither are you. They moved fast. 2 raiders circled around back. One charged the front, swinging his cannon. Lyra grabbed a metal pole and slammed it against his chest. Sparks flew as the raider crashed into a fence. Another fired at Evan, but he rolled behind a barrel and shot back, hitting the man's shoulder. Left side, Evan shouted. Lyra ducked and tackled a 3rd raider, yanking off his helmet and slamming it into the ground. Her strength was more than human, but not limitless. One of them caught her with an electric whip. She screamed, her body convulsing. Evan ran toward her and fired again. The whip raider dropped. He helped Lyra up. Her hands were burned, but her eyes were blazing. "Still want me to hide?" she growled. "Remind me never to argue again," he muttered. More raiders poured down the hill. A small transport ship hovered, above, shining a spotlight on the shack. "This is it," Evan said, loading his last round. "We fall here or we run." Lyra grabbed a broken pipe, twisted it into a spear, and looked at the hill. "I'm not running." The raiders charged. The battle was brutal. Lyra moved like a shadow, striking fast and disappearing into the smoke. Evan used his old tricks, tripwires, oil slicks, even throwing burning cloth at one attacker. The shack burned. One of the raiders set fire to the generator. Flames spread fast. Tools, wires, food, all gone in seconds. Lyra stood in the smoke, coughing, bleeding from a cut on her leg. She turned and saw a raider aiming a blaster at Evan's back. She ran, faster than she ever had before. The shot fired. She threw herself between the blaster and Evan. The pulse hit her in the side. She fell, gasping. "Lyra!" Evan caught her before she hit the ground. He held her tight, shaking. "You're okay," he said over and over. "You're okay." She smiled faintly. "Told you I wasn't hiding." He pressed his hand to her wound. "Stay awake, please." "I'm not leaving you," she whispered. Then her eyes closed. The last two raiders looked at Evan, surprised by his fury. He picked up a heavy pipe and charged like a man with nothing left to lose. They didn't stand a chance. When the dust settled, all the raiders were down, unmoving. The ship above them rose, retreating. The Empress had seen enough. Evan carried Lyra into what was left of the shack. He wrapped her side with clean cloth, sat beside her, and waited. She woke hours later, weak but alive. "You saved me," he said. She gave a small smile. "You saved me first." He took her hand, gently. "I can build again," he said. "Fix the shack, start over." She looked into his eyes. "I don't want to start over without you." Far above in the Vornak Palace, the Empress shattered a glass in her hand. Blood dripped down her fingers. They were supposed to break. "Him," she hissed. The advisor beside her bowed. "He did not break, and now she's loyal." The Empress's eyes glowed red. "Then we'll break them together." Rain poured outside. The shack was half burnt, full of holes, with walls patched using scrap metal and plastic. But inside, a small heater glowed softly. Lyra lay on the bed, her side bandaged, her breath steady but shallow. Evan sat beside her, head lowered, hands black with ash and blood. He hadn't slept in 2 days. His eyes were tired, but he refused to leave her side. When she opened her eyes, he breathed out, in relief. "Hey," he said softly. "You're still with me." Lyra blinked slowly. Her voice was hoarse. "I'm hard to kill." He smiled. "Yeah, I figured." Later that day, she tried to sit up. Evan gently helped her, placing a pillow behind her back. She looked around. "The shack? It's still standing?" "Barely. But it's ours." Lyra looked at him. "Why didn't you run? After the attack, you could have left." Evan sat down beside her. "Because this place stopped being mine alone a long time ago." She studied his face. "I was supposed to be your punishment." He nodded. "That's what they said. But you treated me like I was worth something." "Because you are," he said. "You always were. They just didn't want you to believe it." In the weeks that followed, they rebuilt, together. Evan showed her how to cut metal panels and seal broken pipes. Lyra taught him alien welding techniques and how to insulate power lines better. They worked side by side. She moved slower because of the injury, and he stayed close in case she needed him. He never said it, but she noticed how his hand was always near her back, always ready to catch her. At night, they shared simple meals, talked about stars, about past pain, about dreams. It no longer felt like survival. It felt like home. One evening, Lyra was sitting on the porch watching the orange sunset. Evan came out with 2 mugs of tea. He sat beside her and handed her one. She took a sip. Too sweet. Exactly how you like it, he said, grinning. She gave him a sharp look, then softened. You remember the smallest things. I try. There was silence for a while. Then Lyra whispered, They'll come again. I know. They won't stop until they take one of us. I know that too. She turned to him, her voice trembling. Then why aren't you afraid? Evan looked at her gently. Because I already lost everything once, I won't lose you too, not without a fight. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve this. Yes, you do, he said. You deserve peace, a choice, and love. She stood up slowly, walked a few steps away, then turned around. There's a ritual, she said. In my culture, a sign of choosing. Evan raised an eyebrow. Like a proposal? Lyra nodded. But it's never given lightly. He stood. And what does it mean when someone accepts it? It means they choose to protect the other. Always. Lyra reached into her coat and pulled out a small, glowing crystal tied with silver string. She held it out. For you, she said. Evan stared at it, his heart pounding. He didn't speak. He just stepped forward and gently took it in his hand. Their fingers touched. Neither pulled away. That night, she didn't sleep on the bed alone. She didn't ask for space. She didn't build walls. She lay beside him, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. It was calm, strong, and for the first time in years, so was hers. The next morning, the sky turned black. An alert beeped on Evan's old console. He ran to it. Lyra followed. A message flashed. Royal Fleet incoming. 2 days out. Prepare for collection. Her hands curled into fists. They're coming to take me back. Evan turned to her. Then we leave. We'll run. She shook her head. We can't outrun the Empire. Then we fight again. She looked into his eyes. This time they won't just hurt us. They'll destroy everything. I don't care, he said. I'm not giving you up. She held his face gently. I won't let you die for me. Then we don't die. He whispered. We stand. Together. Far away, the Empress smiled as her fleet moved through the stars. She gave him the crystal, one of her spies reported. Fools, she said. Now they are both mine. But she was wrong. Because the bond they had forged wasn't weakness. It was strength. The sky burned gold as the enemy arrived. 2 massive ships hovered above the canyon, blocking out the sun. The ground trembled beneath Lyra and Evan's feet. Dust flew across the farm as wind from the engines howled. Evan loaded his rifle last time. Lyra stood beside him in full armor, part alien, part human. Her eyes were calm. Her hair was braided back. A glowing silver crystal hung around her neck. Not a slave, not a soldier, not a tool. She was something new now, something stronger. A voice echoed from above through a speaker. This is the Vornak Royal Fleet. Lyra of House Kale, you have broken royal law. You are ordered to surrender. Lyra stepped forward. I am no longer yours. You were given to a human as punishment. That punishment is over. You belong to the throne. Evan shouted back. She doesn't belong to anyone. The voice snapped, full of anger. Return her, human, or be destroyed. Lyra's hand slipped into Evan's. They want to erase what we've built. He nodded. Then let's make... Sure they can't. Moments later, a small dropship landed nearby. Soldiers in black armor marched out, weapons raised. At their front stood Commander Thalos, visor gleaming in the harsh light. He looked at Lyra with disappointment. So this is how far you've fallen, he said coldly. Standing beside a dirt-covered man who fixes pipes. Lyra replied, This dirt-covered man gave me something your empire never did. Thalos tilted his head. And what is that? She stepped closer. A choice. Thalos looked to Evan. Step aside. You will not be harmed. Evan raised his rifle. No, I won't ask again. Lyra stepped between them. You don't Have to. Thalos lifted his arm. The soldiers aimed. Then, Lyra raised her hand. The crystal at her neck glowed bright silver. And the desert answered. The pulse from the stone shot out like a wave. The ground cracked. Rock shattered. Machines sparked. The soldiers fell to their knees, clutching their helmets. Thalos stumbled back. "What have you done?" "It's a bond stone," she said. "An ancient one, meant to seal unity between two different bloodlines. It connects strength and will." Evan gripped her hand tighter as the wind roared. "We don't run," he said. "We rise," she answered. Together, they stepped forward. Evan fought with fierce courage. He used traps, wires, and grit. Lyra moved like lightning, striking fast, defending him at every turn. Thalos lunged at them, but Lyra blocked his blade with her arm guard and kicked him backward. "You trained me," she said, "but you never understood me." He growled. "You were made to serve. I was made to fight for what I believe." She blasted him with a pulse strike from the bond crystal. He flew back into the dust, unconscious. The fleet above started to retreat. Defeated. 3 days later, the stars were quiet. Evan and Lyra stood before a gathering of mixed settlers and exiles from nearby lands. Word of their stand had spread. People came to see if it was true, if a human and a Vornak warrior had defeated the Empress's wrath. They stood hand in hand. Lyra wore a long robe, gray and silver, stitched from what was left of both their clothes. A single flower sat in her hair. Evan wore clean boots for once. His shirt was old, but neatly pressed. He looked at her like she was the only thing in the galaxy. A quiet hush fell over the crowd. Lyra stepped forward. "I was once property," she said, "given away to be shamed, to be forgotten." She looked at Evan and smiled. "But he didn't shame me. He didn't use me. He saw me." Evan added, "I didn't rescue her. She chose to stay. She chose me." Lyra held up the bond crystal. "This is not a symbol of power," she said. "It's a promise." Then she gently placed it over Evan's heart. A cheer rose from the crowd. No one saw a slave. No one saw a prisoner. They saw a bride. Far away, in the Vornak throne room, the Empress sat in silence. A messenger kneeled before her. The girl has become a legend among the outer worlds. The Empress's face was stone. "Let them whisper," she said. "Let them believe love is stronger than command. It will only make their fall sweeter." But even she knew. Some chains once broken can never be reforged. Back on the dusty farm, Evan and Lyra walked side by side, watching the sunset. No soldiers, no orders, just peace. He squeezed her hand. She leaned against his shoulder. And for the first time in both their lives, they were free.